is the eating bird. Although
Eating bird.
eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of this friendship by the atomic soul is cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another or from one body to another. The jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntarily surrender into Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.2 and Svetavattara Upanishad 4.7 confirm this.
Okay. Anyone else wants to read this part?
Namaste, Mataji.
Who's that?
Radhika.
Okay. Okay,
So
Radhika.
where do I read from?
From here. From the verse Samane Vrikshe.
Shamani Rikshe Puroshanamano Nishesho Shantimanamaha Yastum Yada Pashyatya Anyam Hisham Yasya Mahinam Etivita Shokaha.
Go ahead.
Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as an enjoyer of the fruit of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glory, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxiety. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glory of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lamentate for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteousness fight so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once clean of bodily reaction and is promoted to a higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation.
Okay. Thank you, Kirti and Radhika. So Srila Prabhupada here is mentioning that the scientists, they don't have complete idea on what happens when I am hearing my own voice. Is someone's mic open? So
Hare Krishna. Okay, I'm trying to unmute, but someone is trying to mute again.
okay, both of you are trying at the same time, probably.
Maybe, yeah. Okay, we are good now, Mataji.
Yeah. So they say the life ends when the heart stops working. They say that all the processes of life, they go out because there is no blood coming to the brain, no blood coming to the kidneys, liver, and then we all become motionless once the heart stops. That's what they call as death. But then yesterday we have discussed a few of near death experiences in which they could function even after this medical death, what people call as death. Even after that, uh, the person actually could see what's happening, could understand, hear 90% of the accounts of near-death experience of what happened after their death, how the doctors and nurses were panicking and what they were trying to do. It's all correct. So the understanding of doctors is not complete. So some people, when they leave the body, they go through this experience of watching from outside the body of what everyone else is doing to restore them. And some people, they go through this experience of all the events that happened in their life. Their book of life, it's like flipping pages through the book of life, pleasant and unpleasant events, all the feelings that they experienced. And some people, they see this white and blue light. These are the accounts that near death experiences have given us so far. And that's how much the doctors and scientists, that's how much they know. So they don't know anything beyond that. They can't explain why there is consciousness, even if the body is not functioning. But we have a little bit of more information from Garuda Purana and Vedanta Sutra about how death may happen. So, death may come for any reason, for many varieties of reasons. But when it actually happens, uh, then the person experiences total blackness for some time. This is because we have been identifying with this body, and then the body dies. That's why we feel like there is nothing else, we can't function. But then immediately the super soul will stand right next to the soul, and then it illuminates the entire existence of the soul. So now, after this darkness, the illumination will be like, like a tunnel, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. So the spirit soul can see that light and go through that. There are actually like 101 different passageways. That's what Prashna Upanishad says. Uh, those one of those passageways is the passageway destined for this spirit soul to depart. So we can only go through that passageway at the time of death. So these passageways are also called nadis. So these are channels of consciousness. So Garuda Purana 167, it says that uh, death occurs when the main nadi of the body, and then Ida and Pingala, these are two other different nadis, when all of them work together. In general, they all don't work together, they switch. But when they all work together, that's when death happens. And all these nerve channels and channels of energy flow within the body. But then, exact synonyms of medical terminology is not there for that kind of process yet. In any case, they'll depart from one of these channels, one of these nadis, to the next destination. So, which destination they get uh, depends on how the life air left the body. There can be different types of leaving the body. And Bhagavad Gita says one kind is leaving from the Brahmarandra. If the life air leaves from the top of the head, then the person actually goes to the higher planets. And if it leaves from the mouth, then they remain in the earthly planets. And if it leaves from below, then they go to the lower planets. So, depending on that, the super soul illuminates where the soul has to go, the individual soul. He selects the passageway according to the previous activities the living entity has done. And because there is darkness, naturally the soul wants to move towards the light. And as soon as he is out of the body, actually he feels a lot of relief. The same thing, many people who experience near death experience, they also say they feel a kind of relief. And just with the subtle body, a spirit soul can see things better than being in the gross body. It's more ignorance to be in more grosser bodies. As we move up to different upper planets, the body will become more subtle than gross. So in Brahmaloka, I think it's mostly the subtle body. They may not even have any gross body. So this is how the progression will be. So if we can imagine, if we can just feel so much relief not having a gross body, we can imagine how much more relief we'll feel not having even the subtle body. We won't leave subtle body until we get liberated. So we leave the gross body when we die, and then with the subtle body, we travel to another gross body. Like that, we continue to travel with subtle body. Once we get qualified to leave the subtle body, that's when we get liberated, and it will be blissful to leave the subtle body. So, Vedanta Sutra also describes the same thing, like people who are not very impious, who are very pious, they can go to higher planets. So they exhaust their piety in the higher planets and they come back again to the earthly planets in the form of rain. When the rain comes, all those spirit souls who have to come back, they go through the rain, and then they enter the grains, and from the grains they enter the man, and from the man they enter the woman. That's how they take birth in this earthly planets again. So these concepts are very intricate, very difficult to understand the transmigration of the soul. And Srila Prabhupada, he translates one of these words like this from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, Text 85. This is about the allegory of Puranjana. So he says the verse translates like this: the allegory of King Puranjana, described herein according to authority, was heard by me from my spiritual master, and it is full of spiritual knowledge. If one can understand the purpose of this allegory, he will certainly be relieved from the bodily conception and will clearly understand life after death. Although one may not understand what transmigration of the soul actually is, one can fully understand it by studying this narration. So, this story of Puranjana helps us understand how the transmigration takes place. So, Puranjana's story, the background of it is there is a king named Prachina Barhishat. He comes in the line of Prithu Maharaj. He's a descendant of Prithu Maharaj. He gets married to Shatadriti. Shatadriti is the is the daughter of Ocean. And then he begets 10 sons through her, and they are called Prachetas. So, as usual in the beginning of creation, whenever somebody had sons, they also instruct them to have more sons to procreate, to populate the universe. That was the responsibility given to them. So Prachina Barhi, he also asks his sons Prachetas to populate the universe, to get married and populate the universe. But Prachetas, they were not interested at that time. They wanted to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they go out and they meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for 10,000 years. So 10,000 years at that time was a practical time limit, I guess. So but then they meet Lord Shiva when they were performing austerities. Lord Shiva comes kindly to instruct them about how they should pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So he gives detailed instructions to them. They follow Lord Shiva's guidance and they perform this austerity for 10,000 years. And then they could see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face after that, because they followed the instructions of Lord Shiva, and they were all like they never fought among themselves. That's one of the points that Krishna mentions when he comes to see them. He tells that I'm very pleased with you because you cooperate with each other very nicely. So when all his sons are performing all these austerities, Prachina Barhishat, he was engaged in performing a lot of ritualistic sacrifices uh, to get some fruitive results. He wanted to get some results which will take him to higher planets, which will produce different things in the kingdom. Like that, he performed many animal sacrifices for that. So when he was being like that, Narada Muni, he comes to see him. Narada Muni will come to enlighten anybody. Like he takes it upon himself to help people who are getting lost in this material world. So he comes to see Prachina Barhish. He becomes very compassionate on him because this is not the way to go. Performing all these fruitive sacrifices will not help him. So he comes and he asks him, what do you want to get out of all these things? Why are you performing these fruitive activities? The aim of life is to get rid of miseries and enjoy happiness. But this fruitive activity is not going to give you that. You're not going to get that result. Look up, look in the sky. All these animals that you sacrificed, they are waiting for you to die so that they can pierce you with their iron horns. So you need to suffer the same pain as you inflicted on them. So he tells him, and then he starts out with this allegorical story, Puranjana story. So Puranjana was a celebrated king. His activities are very well known, and he had a friend called Avyama. So his friend was very mysterious. No one could understand the activities of his friend. And Puranjana was looking for a place to live. He had unlimited sense desires, and he could not find any place to live. And then he's wandering everywhere, and then he comes across this place called Bharatavarsha. Bharatavarsha is very nicely, it has beautiful gardens, and it's very beautiful and nicely located. And he could see a city of 9 gates in that Bharatavarsha. And also he saw a beautiful woman when he was um, looking everywhere. He saw a beautiful woman, and she was wandering without any engagement. And then she had many servants, 10 servants, and each servant had hundreds of wives accompanying. And she was protected by a 5 hooded serpent. So Puranjana was very attracted to her beautiful form. And then he asks her if, are you looking for a husband? You know, I am very popular and I'm very strong. He advertises himself to be a very good husband. And then the lady replies, yes, but I don't even know what is my origin. Like, if you want to marry me, you might want to know where I am from. But I don't even know where I am from. And I don't even know where all these servants are from. And this 5 hooded serpent, it takes care of me all the time. And even when everyone is sleeping, it protects this city of 9 gates. So if you are okay, you can accept me and we can live in this city of 9 gates. It's a very nice place for us to enjoy. So who can deny a person like you to be their husband? So I'm okay if you want to marry me. And she also glorifies the householder life, that man and women, they support each other through mutual understanding, and they enjoy householder life. Nothing is better than householder life. She also encourages the king to get married. So the king Puranjana, he enters into householder life. He gets married to the lady, and then he becomes completely like under her control. So when whatever the queen says, that's what he does. When the queen wanted to dine, he dines with her. When the queen chewed, the Puranjana chewed along with her. When the queen sang, he also sang. When the queen cried, he also cried. When the queen laughed, he also laughed. When the queen talked, he talked. When the queen walked, he walked behind her. So, like this, the king did everything the queen did. Always, whatever the queen told, that's what he did. Like this, he followed her all the time. He was completely captivated by his nice wife. He was like this, he was cheated. He was cheated in his whole existence in the material world. So one day, he gave up the company of the queen and went to the forest to hunt just for one day. Otherwise, he's always with her. And then he took up his bow and arrows and he hunted a lot of animals. He killed a lot of animals. And all the saintly persons were not very happy with the activity he has done. And he comes back home tired. Killing was merciless, but he comes back home tired and he takes a nice shower and decorates himself nicely. And he wanted to see his wife. And his wife was nowhere to see. He looked everywhere and he couldn't find her. And finally, he finds her lying on the floor without any decoration. She's really upset that he left her, even for that little time. He's so surrendered that he pacifies her by touching her feet and by, apologizing and by trying to please her in some way. So now again, she gets pacified and he's careful now. He never leaves her again. Then they had 1100 sons and 110 daughters, thousands of grandsons. Like that, his whole dynasty filled the entire Bharatavarsha. So now all these grandsons and everybody, they were plundering Puranjana for all his riches. When there is so many members in the family, obviously nothing is enough. They keep, demanding more and more things. And Puranjana is implicated because of his desires. He has this, to fulfill one desire, you enter into something and then you have to do something else and you have to fulfill that desire. It's like a network, and he's firmly caught in that network. And then Narada Muni is telling this story to Prachina Barhishat, and Narada Muni tells, he's like you. He's performing all these sacrifices and killing so many animals to fulfill his own desires. And then he goes on telling what happens to Puranjana next. So Puranjana, the city of 9 gates, eventually there will be many disturbances created in that city by Chandavega, by Kalakanya, by Yavana Raja. And eventually this five-hooded serpent, which was protecting, it becomes very weak and it could not protect them anymore. Finally, Yavana Raja comes and defeats Puranjana and takes him away. Puranjana was dragged with great force by this powerful Yavana. And out of his ignorance, he still could not remember his best friend. In the beginning, when we started the story, we mentioned that there is one friend, Avignata, whose activities are very mystical. No one can understand. He doesn't remember that friend even at this time. And he gives up his body like this. Whom does he remember at the time of his death? Can anyone guess?
His wife.
Yes, he remembers his wife because that was his object of meditation his entire life. So, consequently, he becomes a beautiful, well situated woman in his next life. So, he becomes the daughter of king of Vidarbha. So, his name would be Vaidarbhi. So, Vaidarbhi, she marries, by good fortune, she marries a very good king, Malayadvaja. Malayadvaja is a devotee of Lord Krishna. So she serves, Vaidarbi serves Malayadwaja very nicely entire life. And even when he gives up all his kingdom and takes Vanaprastha, goes to the forest, she accompanies him and she serves him there also. So after a few years in Vanaprastha, Malayadwaja, he develops pure devotional service to Krishna. And then he leaves his body. He leaves his body, and at that time, Vaidarbhi, she becomes very disappointed, very depressed. She's alone in the forest. Her husband left his body, and she doesn't know what to do. She dedicated her life to the husband, and she was crying loudly and very pitifully. And she was preparing to leave her body along with her husband. So at that time, a Brahmana comes, who was the old friend of Puranjana. That Brahmana comes. He comes and he began to pacify the queen with sweet words. So Brahmana, he tells, "Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who's the man lying here? It appears you are lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past. You have consulted me many times in the past, but now you don't remember. My dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had an intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and you accepted this position as an enjoyer in the material world. Both you and I are like two swans. We are living in the same heart, which is just like Manasa Lake. And we have been living here for many thousands of years, and we are still away from our original home. I am your very same old friend. Since you have left me, you have become more and more materialistic. Huh? In this world, you have traveled in different forms. And you were a man once, you are a woman now. In this city of 9 gates, you have traveled and you didn't get anywhere. You became overly absorbed in sense enjoyment and you've forgotten the spiritual life due to your material conceptions. So, actually, you are not the daughter of Vidarbha. You are not Vaidarbi. Nor is this man Malayadwaja your ever well wishing husband. Nor you are the husband of Puranjani. Puranjana is the Puranjani's husband. You are simply captivated by this body. Sometimes you think of yourself as a man, sometimes you think of yourself as chaste woman, sometimes you think of yourself as a neutral eunuch. This is all because of body. This is the illusory energy. This is also my potency. Actually, both of us, you and I, are spiritual identities. Just try to understand. I'm trying to explain you the position. So, my dear friend, I, the super soul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we both are spiritual. So, my dear friend, you're not different from me in the position, but try to understand. Those who are advanced scholars, they don't find any difference in quality, but there is difference in quantity. So we both are like these two swans, and when this one swan turns to the other swan for instruction, that's when it regains the original Krishna consciousness. So this is what Narada Muni tells Prachina Barhishat. He explains a little bit about the story of Puranjana, why he told, but then Prachina Barhishat could not really understand it, and then he asks Narada Muni again to explain in detail. So this Avignata, like we saw, is the super soul. He is the eternal friend of living entity. So living entities, they don't realize that, but he's always there with living entities. Living entity prefers to enjoy in the modes of material nature, but that's not what gives him happiness. Turning towards the super soul is what gives him happiness. But unfortunately, most of us, we don't realize that. And the the 10 servants of Puranjani, she has no name, but Puranjani is associated with Puranjana. So her name is Puranjani. Um, the 10 servants are the 5 working senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. So the knowledge acquiring senses are hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, and 5 working senses are hands, legs, speech, evacuating organs, and reproductive organs. So these are the 10 servants. They have unlimited wives, it is mentioned, like hundreds of wives. That means senses have unlimited engagements. So we have unlimited engagements for our senses. And then the 5 hooded serpent are the 5 life airs within the body: prana, apana, samana, vyana, udana. So as long as they are in balance, the body functions. When they go out of balance, the body dies. So this 5 hooded serpent is like the 5 life airs which keep the body functioning, which protect the body. And the queen herself is one's intelligence. Whether we are awake or asleep, intelligence creates different situations. So when the king left the intelligence and went away, just following his senses, that's when he created havoc. But when he comes back, he takes shelter of his intelligence again, but doesn't mean it's of any good if the intelligence is polluted. So intelligence has to be, um, not polluted, but should be purified. And then the next thing is the disturbances. So all these disturbances are the disturbances that will be created in everyone's body. Chanda Vega is the time itself. Everyone, we all have designated time, designated number of breaths. So as soon as the number of breaths designated to us is over, we have to leave the body. So that's why the yogis, they master the art of breathing. Some yogis, they can live without breathing for many, many years also. That's how they extend their life. So that they can meditate further and they can accomplish perfection in that meditation. So that is one method to increase the life, because number of breaths is what counts. And the time, if we pass that number of breaths, that itself is the killer. And Chanda Vega is the name used for that. Chanda Vega was attacking the kingdom of Puranjana. And then the second thing is Kalakanya. Kalakanya comes into Puranjana's kingdom and she embraces Puranjana. Even though Puranjana didn't want her to, because she was not looking pretty at all. She was very ugly. So this allegory indicates old age. No one wants old age, but old age comes anyways. Just like this verse says, um, just when the garments become old, when the clothes become old, we give up and we take up new, we buy new clothes, we put on new clothes. Similarly, everybody's body gets old. The garment we are wearing on top of the spirit soul, which is this body, it gets old. And similarly, Puranjanas also became old. Kala Kanya is the allegory used for that. And then Yavana Raja. Yavana Raja is actually death himself. He could be Yamaraj, he could be Yamadutas, and then he comes. Even if we don't want to die, sometimes, for very sinful people, Yamadutas come. Yamadutas want to take the soul, but the soul doesn't want to leave the body because of the attachment the soul has towards the body. If someone is firmly engrossed in the bodily conception of life, it's very difficult for them to leave the body. So what these Yamadutas do is they put the ropes around the neck of the soul and they pull the soul out of the body. Even this people experienced in the near death experience. They see all these fierce looking creatures coming and trying to pull them out. Actually they are very scary Yamadutas. People are very afraid of Yamadutas. So this Yavana Raja is Yamadutas. Yamadutas come and take the spirit soul from the body. So these are the allegories used. There are many more details about how the senses go to different places and all that, but I didn't want to go into too many details. So Narada Muni, he tells Prachina Barhishat about this, and then he tries to enlighten him that this is not the way to go. You are doing all these fruitive activities, but because of this, you won't get any liberation. You won't um, come out of this bodily conception of life. If as long as we want something for the body, we may employ different means to get it, but that does not relieve us from the chain of birth and death. So as long as we want something, we will be granted that. But along with that will come another body, will come next life. And we have to go along with all our desires, all our inclinations into the next body. Some depending on whether we deserve it or not, we may get some of our desires fulfilled because the super soul is sitting right next to the individual soul. He can smell our desires. We don't have to tell him. He can see what's happening and he can see what we are up to. So he may give us some things, but when these material desires, when they are fulfilled, they don't stop at one fulfillment. It's like putting more fuel in the fire. So they'll continue to increase. And then we may desire more and more things. Okay, one desire is fulfilled, but then lead to another desire. So in that way, we continuously endeavor for more and more desires, and we continuously take birth after birth. If taking birth and dying is not so painful, then doing this business of fulfilling desires is not so painful. But birth and death are very painful, and along with them comes disease and old age also. So these painful things we have to go through again and again, and we have to continuously take different kinds of bodies. But the city of nine gates in Puranjana's story is the human body. We have searched in all different species for happiness. Like just like Puranjana was looking for a perfect place, but he could not find any better place than the city of nine gates. So this body is obtained to fulfill one's desires fully. But even in that, there is no complete satisfaction. Just like Puranjana, even though he tried to fulfill all his desires, eventually at the end of his life, all he could get is frustration from all these plundering relatives. That's how a normal man's life would be also. They go through life, they accomplish so many things, but then eventually they get old and no one wants to be around old people. No one wants to sit next to an old person. So they live a life of frustration at the end of life. Many old people, uh, they reminisce their younger times. They tell everybody, oh, I used to do that, I used to do this. But there is nothing that they can feel happy about during old age. But for a devotee, old age is actually his friend because all the senses are subdued. They don't bother so much. All you have is the holy name and serving the Lord. So that's what I heard from old devotees, that old age is actually their friend and they like it. They like to get old. A materialistic man may not like to get old, but a devotee likes it in old age. There is not many responsibilities. You can fully focus on Krishna's holy name and pastimes and hear lectures and utilize life fully for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness. So, this is the analogy of Puranjana that Narada Muni explains to Prachina Barhishat, and he realizes, he understands why Narada Muni is giving this analogy to him. Because Prachina Barhishat himself, he married a nice lady and he's all involved in these fruitive activities. And Narada Muni kindly helps him to realize that's not the goal of life, kindly helps him to get out of that. So, after that, Prachina Barahishat continues his spiritual journey and eventually makes significant progress. So, we all can learn from this lesson that most importantly, taking shelter of the super soul, that moment when Vaidarbhi was crying and he came and he's explaining, it was significant. We all are in the same boat. We are going through life after life, not looking at the super soul, not taking instructions from him. But then he's right there. Like even when we leave the body, he's the only one who's there to show us the path, to show us where to go next. And he's there to help us progress. He's there to help us make advancement, spiritual advancement, and move towards eternal blissful life. So we all need to understand that He is our only best friend. And when we turn towards Him, and it'll be all blissful. We don't have to go through these lives. We don't have to go through these bodies which get old. We don't have to change the bodies. So that's something that was very significant in the story of Puranjana, the invisible friend, the best friend of Puranjana, the best friend of Vaidarbhi. So that's all I have for today. I'll stop here and open up for comments or questions. I didn't go through the slides, so I'm just going through it now. Any questions, experiences, or realizations? Anybody wants to share? Gita Mala Mataji. Do you want to share any realizations?
Not really.
Geeta Malamaji, is old age really better?
Old age is not better, but it does give you a lot of wisdom, which comes with experience, you know. So it has its value.
Are the senses like don't drag you here and there when you get old?
Not necessarily. If you begin to become more mature in your practices, you actually begin to recognize and control it better to some degree. And also the urgency, you know, I mean, here in the West, we color our hair, we do all kinds of things to make ourselves look younger, fix our teeth and do so many things. But otherwise, in other Eastern culture, at least, and there also it's done now, but it is a natural there is evidence that you're getting old, that the body is failing and you don't look the same. The age reflects upon you
Mhm.
in terms of energy and look and
Gita Mala Mataji, shall I add one comment on that?
sure, please.
No, when you're taking, no, what
Just
I mean, when you're saying, I was just thinking, like, might be physically you're getting old, but like mind wise and stuff, like by listening to all this, you're getting matured, I believe. I don't know, just
no, I
the
mean, in
thought
one
to be.
sense, you brought up a good point, Sunita. In one sense, the soul itself is ageless, right?
Yes, yes,
In fact, I
Mataji.
think one plastic surgeon once said that no person, when they look into a mirror, thinks they are old.
Yeah.
so,
I,
so
yeah, by
yeah,
joining in these classes, I think, um, like day by day, I think our devotion is like, when compared to the previous past, it's getting better and better, and we are moving towards that. So I think one way it is like we are going in the right path. That's how I am feeling. It's just I
right. If
felt
you have God conscious
saying it.
association, by the
Yeah.
time you're old, you should have some level of understanding. But it's
Yes.
to answer the question also that Sundari Radhika's question. Not all old people have wisdom. You know what I'm saying? There are
Yeah.
plenty of
True,
old people who
Mataji.
spend
True.
their entire time just playing golf and doing material things till the day they die. So old age doesn't necessarily mean that you have your sense control and some wisdom.
Yeah. I think just for devotees, they feel relief, but other people, they feel more frustrated. That's what I was saying. Like they still will have their desires, but the body won't let them execute those desires.
Right. And I think the fear of death is there. I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't consider myself fully a devotee, but I think the fear of death is there for everybody, unless you are a really mature devotee, really advanced devotee.
Mm, yes.
And I'm sure it's
Any
there
other
more
comment?
for, no, it's there
Yes.
more for people who are probably not devotees. I'm thinking Sundari Radhika, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And in association, when I was hearing all these classes with all of you, it's like in association, you develop this knowledge. The advancement will come in association when we read all these things. We feel like, really, we are not this body, just a feeling, but the maturity has to come to implement it in life. But at least the feeling will come when we read the scriptures in the association of devotees.
I know I never understood that statement. Actually, in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada says that
Mm.
you do not make advancement without association.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm a prime example of that. When I had less association, I made less advancement. When I
No.
have more association, you naturally make a little bit of advancement.
Mm. See, like everybody's situation is different, and if we have the facility to take association and we don't, that's a different thing. But if we don't have the facility, then Krishna will make up for that.
That is true.
Mataji, can you tell me what Narada exactly tells Prachetas that they give up the material life and they don't want to marry? Like, what motivates them?
They Narada won't tell them. It's just their own desire to perform austerities. They eventually get married, Mataji, after the sacrifice, the austerities. Krishna comes and then he tells them all to marry one lady. Pramlocha is her name. Prachetas, all 10 of them marry Pramlocha. And this is the example that is used when Draupadi was conflicted to marry 5 people. But yeah, they marry and they also have one son after that.
Thank you,
Mataji,
Mataji.
Mataji, you mentioned that 10 senses, like 5 or like limb with 2 legs and hands, and where did you get that? Like
It's in Bhagavatam, Mataji. All these details are.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay. Any other comments? If no other comments, I think Rasaraj Prabhu will be ready for us with the quiz.
Okay, Mataji, are we ready?
Today's quiz might be too complicated with too many names.
It's easy, Mataji.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll go ahead then.
Okay.
Let's stop the screen sharing. Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Still, we have 6 more devotees to answer. Okay. Now it's quickly going on. 4 more devotees to answer are there. Okay. 804. Maybe it's last. We'll take 30 more seconds and we'll close this quiz. Okay, last 15 seconds. Please submit your answers. All right, we can end here. Then say result. Here you go, answers. So the first question was how transfer of atomic soul to another body is made possible. This is what Prabhupada is saying. Prabhupada is saying in the purport of today's verse, by the grace of super soul, grace and desired and past deeds. These two are correct answer. So which Purana did the speaker refer today? It is Garuda Purana, the first slide. Next, how many kinds of living the body are there? It is also from the slides. It's a 3. Which story of Bhagavatam did the speaker narrate today? So Mataji narrated 2 stories. One is King Puranjana, and Prachinabhari, right? That's a good story, but the both are correct answers. What analogy is given for soul and super soul? So it is 2 birds sitting on the same tree. Who is Malay Dwaja? Okay, it's a devotee of the Lord. That's what I heard. Mataji, if I missed something, please correct me. Then how many gates? Okay, at least 100% correct. 9 gates. How many servants? It's 10 servants, right? Mataji represent 10 servants with 10 different things. And yeah, last question. What does Kalakanya represents? It is old age. Kalakanya represents old age. Thank you everyone for participating in the quiz. Hare Krishna.
Thank you all the devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa
Patanam Pavadebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Ananta Koti Vaishnava
Vaishnavandaki
Shri Prabhupada
Jai
Ki Jai.
Prabhupada Ki